so now it's being live streamed. And then just checking, the recording is going to the cloud. I can't seem to record onto my device anymore, but I think that should be fine. Correct, APIC? Okay, great. While we have the audience roll in, we're going to start with a warm-up question for the composers present. And I've been thinking about this question a lot, especially during the initial process of like a project or an endeavor. What has been the most random source of inspiration for a piece? Like you, you weren't expecting, you just weren't expecting it. It might have hit you like an epiphany, or yeah, you just weren't expecting it, and it somehow contributed to one of your pieces. Or it could be a source of inspiration that was fairly new to you at the time that you wanted to explore. And I think for now we'll just go in the order of the images on our wonderful promo banner. So we'll do Liliya, and then Julie, and then Bosba. And please feel free to unmute yourselves and answer the question.
Hi everyone, I'm so happy to be here and see some familiar faces too, and some unfamiliar, but it's great. So I don't think I can answer this question honestly, because it's not like in my memory I have every of my bees and compared what would be the most unexpected inspiration. But I guess the one that's kind of the piece that I most recently wrote, I was driving in car to my work, and I suddenly started to hear accordion sounds in my head, like accordion with the swells, like with this sort of big swells crescendo, and I started to hum something that sounded like a super primitive melody with like that sound. And then it happened too, and I was like, okay, for sake of whatever, I decided to record it on my phone while I was driving. And then it just turned out that I used it for my string orchestra piece, which is not quite the same as accordion, but I called it a sunset sunflowers. It's about my feelings towards the events in Ukraine. Accordion being particularly that the instrument that's one of their folk tradition. So yeah, but that was to me it was unusual, because even though it happens sometimes I sing something that I write, but I particularly heard that sound, and it was just came out of nowhere. I was just driving and appeared in my head.
Oh, but you totally answered the question, because it came out of nowhere, and that was fantastic. And I really appreciated hearing like the source of the inspiration and how it doesn't always directly translate into the like you heard the accordion, but it wasn't just, it didn't go from accordion to accordion, right? It went from accordion
No, to voice and then to string orchestra. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because I was actually humming it, and I also remember I was driving, I was trying to pick the sound with which I would want, like not the vowel, even not the vowel. I think I picked up something like shh, like rather than any vowel even to sing into it. So it was a very strange singing. I wouldn't show it to anyone for sure.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing, Liliya. Julie?
Hi, Liliya. Nice to see you. I think all of my pieces come from some weird thing in my life, and but I think my favorite one is the piece that I wrote about the semifinal in 2019 between maybe 2018, between Nadal and Federer at Wimbledon. And I love tennis. I don't play tennis, but I love watching tennis. And the sounds of tennis were just extremely inspiring. Nadal is known for his grunts. And so this particular instrumentation was for microtonal guitar and drum kit. And so you can imagine like you like hit the ball and that's like a bass drum, or if the ball hits the net, it can be like a cymbal. But then also with the microtonal guitar, electric guitar, you can really capture, I think, the nuances of Nadal's grunt. And I can kind of recreate it for you right now if you'd like, but I really encourage you to look up a video. Okay, so Diana says yes, but it's like he essentially goes, it's like an accent, and then he glissandos down to another note, and always it's about the same interval, but it changes every time he hits the ball. And it mostly happens when he's very tired. And so it gets more and more exciting as the game goes on.
I think that's fantastic. I don't follow tennis, but I think I learned more about tennis just a bit more when you were describing how they were making the movements and the sound. I think that's super cool, Julie. Thank you so much. Bosba?
Hi. I think I grew up singing, so I have a background in singing. I grew up as a singer before I switched to composition for college. And I think I would say the most random sort of inspiration, well, maybe not random, just I guess like spontaneous. I was in the beginning of writing of a choral cycle piece. So basically, it was really early in the year last year. And I think I was cycling to a museum or something. And I have a very bad habit sometimes of just humming things. And I just hummed a melody that I really liked. Had to stop in the middle of the road, pull aside, open my voice memo, record it. And then essentially, later on, I wrote a 18-minute choral piece out of that little motif.
Oh, I like that very much. I like how it's like, inspiration struck, and then were you cognizant of the people around you, or were you just like, I don't care what anybody is looking at me. I just need to get this down.
Yeah, I mean, I just pulled in, like just on the pavement for basically, 20-second, recorded it, put my phone away, and just went on with my day. And then I came back to it much later when it was time to write some music down.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you all composers for sharing. I think it's absolutely magical to hear that your magnificent pieces, these grand masterpieces are born from like the everyday or things that strike you, and they seem like they seem small, right? The sounds, but that source of inspiration can be like at the very end. So I just love it. It's so magical to me, and I hope, audience, you find that it is also magical, and that the composers have inspired you to, like, next time you hear something or are inspired by this little thing, to run with it. Okay. So thank you, composers, for playing the warm-up question. I'm going to go ahead, audience members, hello, welcome, and begin the official intro, and then the composers themselves will introduce themselves, and then we're going to play our games. So super excited. So again, hello everyone. I'm super excited to welcome you to the 5th and final Realms of Courage Composers panel. I'm Angela Hahn, artist, musician, and educator, and the facilitator of this panel. And I have the honor of presenting 3 phenomenal composers. You've heard from Liliya Ugay, Julie Zhu, and Bosba Panh. So thank you, composers, for being here. It is such an honor to have you. Before we plunge into the activities I have planned, I'd like to take a moment to give everyone here more context about this event. So this composers panel is part of a larger project called Realms of Courage, celebrating Asian women composers, that amplifies composers who identify as Asian women through art inspired by their music and lived experiences. You can learn more about Realms of Courage by saving the link in the chat. Okay, so this project is funded by the San Francisco Arts Commission, SFAC, and the Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Center, otherwise known as APIC. And these events, the composers panels, are presented by Angela Han Art LLC and APIC through this year's 25th Annual United States of Asian America Festival, otherwise known as USAAF, the theme being Generations of Power. If you're curious to learn more about these organizations, you can again find more info in the chat. To learn more about the composers panels, there were 5 total. You can also find a link in the chat. Some crucial shout outs here. So many thanks to the amazing administrators of APIC, Diana, TJ, Melanie, Vinay, for your support in making these panels happen. Much gratitude as well to our wonderful events associate, Samara, for making sure everything flows smoothly from behind the scenes. And a big shout out to the ASL interpreters who have ensured that these panels are accessible to our audiences. Today I want to thank Nicole and Kristen for their time, heart, and energy in interpreting this panel. Please note that Nicole and Kristen will be spotlit throughout the entire panel. If you are in fact on YouTube for the best ASL interpretation experience, please join us on Zoom. And last thing, there are last thing about for this part, there are live automatic captions available on Zoom. You just need to press the button that says CC. It's just a CC, I believe it's right next to the Q&A button. Moving on, I want to acknowledge that I'm facilitating this Realms of Courage Composers panel on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. I recognize that I am immensely privileged to celebrate the creativity and stories of Asian women, of the Realms of Courage composers, and of myself on this land that is stewarded by the Ramaytush Ohlone, and which they have stewarded for generations. Please save the link in the chat that will lead you to supporting the efforts of the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone, including land rematriation, ecological restoration, and upcoming arts and culture projects. Today we have the chance to listen to these Realms of Courage composers and ask them your burning questions. So without further ado, I'd like to turn our attention to the composers. Composers, this is the time to introduce yourselves. So if you can please share, 1, your name, number 2, where you're from, where you're located, however you want to interpret that part. Who are you as a composer, and what does your work focus on? And finally, if you can give us like a composition recommendation that we should all listen to in the chat as in the form of a link, that would be phenomenal. So I know for the warm-up we went a certain way, but if we can go Bosba, Julie, and then Liliya this time for the introductions, that would be fabulous. So whenever you're ready.
Sure. So my name is Bosba. I'm Cambodian. I studied in the States and I'm now based in London. I did my graduate studies at the University of Cambridge. And before that, I was at the New England Conservatory of Music up in Boston. I grew up mostly as a singer, and then I picked up classical guitar as my first instrument, along with singing. And then I picked up a little bit of piano later on. And I didn't start composing really until I was 16 and a half. And essentially it was because I wanted to be the smart singer in my class. And I ended up switching to composition when I started my undergraduate degree, and went on, to do another degree after that. And my music is mostly inspired, by a lot of things. I think it depends on the commission brief, but most of the time it's usually based on memory and, I guess like memory and identity. Lost a lot of it, partly because since I'm from Cambodia, we have a history of the Khmer Rouge genocide. And essentially, it has, even when I don't write explicitly about that particular subject, I end up, somehow referencing to them or to it or to my cultural background. And one of the pieces that I recommend the audience to read, to listen, is called Father Mine. It's a song cycle I wrote in 2018, and it was sort of like my first, I guess, step into writing music that talked about that kind of horror, like historical horror that happened in Cambodia. And even though it's like a rough piece, and I was still young when I wrote this piece, I still think that it was sort of like my breakthrough. And from that point on, I was able to grapple with the subject a little bit better. So let me put the link. So this is the link to where you can listen to the piece, but you can also, what's quite important actually is to read the program notes for this particular piece. And I have it on issue. So if anybody wants to look at the music and read the program notes, you can look at it on issue. Obviously my style has quite changed since 2018, but I still think that this particular piece was quite instrumental in my career. There are much recent pieces where my style is more mature, but I think this is one of the pieces that I think if somebody wants to know who I am as a composer and how I approach my art, this is one of the pieces that I would recommend the audience to read and listen to.
Thank you so much, Bosba. And as you can see, she has included that in the link. Please do save both and do read the program notes. That's very important. So thank you so much again, Bosba, for sharing. We're going to go to Julie next.
Hi, I'm Julie Zhu, and I'm a Chinese American composer. I'm currently in LA, but I am based in San Francisco and in Paris. My work is, I still don't really know how to really describe it, mainly because I was working in a lot of different things before I came to composition. So I was mainly a visual artist, a painter, did installation art, made a lot of videos, and then happened upon graphic scores, and from graphic scores started composing when I was, I think, 28. So it's really the culmination of sort of like all these different journeys that made me realize that actually composition marries all my interests together. So I study mathematics, and I'm really into sort of electronic music, sort of all of these things together. I mean, I just get to explore everything in composition. I do have a piece that I just composed last summer, and I think it maybe doesn't, I'm not sure if it represents who I am, but I really like it. And it's for a very weird instrumentation. It's for instruments that I've never written before. They're shang, which is the Chinese mouth organ. There's harp, there's the cembalo, there's the organ, there's the accordion, and there's bass voice. So it's very weird. It's called Pinks, and it's about summer. It's about sadness. It's about cicadas. It combines a lot of my interests. There's like a little video that's kind of secret that maybe you'll be able to see. And so right now I'm just interested in exploring how I can sort of bring everything that I love into my music. Thank you.
That's so marvelous. I love how you started with so many different places and so many different disciplines. And now you're here today. Thank you so much, Julie. And Liliya.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Liliya Ugay, and I am from Uzbekistan, which is a country in Central Asia. However, I'm ethnically half Korean and half Tatar, so it's a bit of an interesting thing because my ancestry is my father's parents were one of this 170,000 Koreans who were deported from east of Russia to Central Asia. So it is a little bit interesting there. But I'm based in America, in Florida. I teach at Florida State University. So my music, because I kind of been through these different cultures throughout my life, being born in Uzbekistan and sort of also studying Uzbek music, studying traditional. Like I'm also a pianist, going through the rigorous training as a pianist. Playing jazz a lot both as a teenager and undergraduate student, and then also exploring a lot of American minimalism, especially during my time at Yale. So all of that, I feel like I'm a little bit of a sponge, and I feel that just as Bosba mentioned, I connect my identity. I get inspired by, in some way, get inspired, or like I express my identity through my music, but at the same time, I am also flexible in aiding something towards it, or aiding something towards my music, depending on the subject or the particular commission that I'm writing. So the piece I would like to share is Chlong Ton Le. Let's see. One of my favorite collaborators is actually, she's Khmer, she's Cambodian poet. Her name is Sokun Terisway. And this piece is a monodrama. It's actually on YouTube, it's still unlisted. I haven't publicized it yet, but my team is all okay with with this recording right now. So I feel like I'm comfortable on sending it to you. So we just recorded it. We just premiered it this spring, and the piece explores. I also forgot to mention, I'm also a mother. So the piece explores life of three women from different parts of the world. One is in Central Asia. Another one is sort of in a Western part, in a Western society, where there is like immigrants from Russia to America, but it's a life of musicians, the second part. And the third part is a Cambodian woman who is delivering child while trying to cross Mekong River. So in each of them, I explored this different cultural identities of myself, I guess. And I also, it's monodrama, it's for soprano, and wonderful, wonderful singer, my friend Jing Shan Yu. She's performing, and I'm performing piano part. So I feel like with this work, because it was something that I wanted to do. It wasn't anything that I was commissioned for. It was something that I got grant for from Opera America. And it just was completely just the way that I wanted to write this piece, and the way what I was feeling strongly about and what I was inspired by. It explores a lot of femaleness in terms of the physical way too. The first story is based on a documentary by Uzbek political activist and visual artist Umida Khmenova, who made this film about the customs of showing blood on the bed sheet of the first wedding night, obviously for young women. And the second story deals with postpartum depression and a new mother. And the third story deals just literally with a delivery of the child. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you, Liliya. And this is so exciting because the last time I talked with you, the recording was not yet available, correct? And so now, audience members,
Yeah.
you might be, this is such a special moment. So save it. Save the link in the chat. Okay, thank you, Liliya. Thank you, all three composers, for sharing the your amazingness to everyone here today and those watching on YouTube. so excited. We're going to move forward with the games. So today's panel will focus on the theme of courage. Elements of courage. We're going to talk about courage. So I prepared 2 activities for us to explore this theme. So let's get ready to play our first game, which is Spin the Wheel. And audience members, you do have opportunities to ask your questions during the Q&A portion of the panel. This time, what's going to happen is, in a moment, we're going to pull up an image of the 8 questions that we're going to be spinning the wheel with. And afterwards, we're going to pull up the actual spin the wheel. And composers, you will each spin it. We'll do this for you. You're going to say spin, and we're going to press the button for you. And whichever pie slice the arrow lands on will be the question you'll answer. So you don't know what you're going to get. So this is going to be extra fun. This means that 3 of you will get completely different questions. Composers and the audience, please don't worry about remembering the question. We'll be including the question in the chat soon after we spin. Okay, so if we can pull up the series of questions, I will read them out loud. Okay, so our number 1. When have you achieved the impossible? 2. Can you describe a time in which you turned a mistake into magic? Number 3. When and how have you surprised yourself? 4. Can you describe a time in which life asked you to step into a greater version of yourself? Number 5. How do you approach the unknown? Number 6. Can you describe a time in which you yourself created your own opportunity? 7. What are things unique to you that no one can take away? And finally, number 8 is, what motivates you to get up every day and continue chasing your hopes and dreams? And so composers, please feel free to answer and interpret the question as you will, as your identity. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. As a composer, can you please answer these questions when you get the pie slice that's going to come up. So if we can close this screen share again, and then we're going to pull up the wheel. I'm so excited. Okay, and just a heads up, everyone, if you see any ads, we don't endorse it or anything like that. We're just here for the Realms of Courage and Apex Festival. So Julie, why don't we begin with you first, and then we'll do Liliya and then Bosba. So Julie, tell us whenever to spin.
Spin, please. Stop. Or does it stop automatically?
Yeah, it just stops automatically.
Okay.
Okay, number 3.
When and how have I surprised myself?
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you, Julie, for asking the question. When and how have you surprised yourself as a creator, as a composer?
I guess in general, I am surprised I am a composer. So it was just, I feel, I don't know, at least growing up, I was playing piano. And then when I started, I was 18 when I started playing carillon, and for those of you who don't know, and it's okay if you don't, a carillon is a set of bells inside of a tower. So that's like, they're usually around 50 bells, and you play on a wooden keyboard. Even despite playing those instruments, I never thought that I could, compose, because everyone I was playing was, Bach or Beethoven or, Philip Glass, someone. And I think I still feel really lucky and surprised to be doing this. it just, for me, turning, an idea into notation that someone else then interprets and performs, it feels like such a luxury to me. And I just remember sort of that moment in my late 20s that I decided that I would actually try for it. And so I composed 4 pieces, the 4 pieces that were on my application to the doctorate in music composition. And miraculously, like seriously and miraculously, I got in. And so through that experience, learned so much. And I'm just really excited to explore everything. So, Liliya's new piece and Bosba's piece is just, it's really great to hear, because I just want to hear everything. So
I love it. And you're talking about luxury. I was like, we'll take it. We'll take all the luxury we can get. Oh, thank you so much, Julie, for sharing. Liliya, you still game to go next?
Yeah, sure. I got, for some reason my Zoom got frozen for a moment, so I got off during the time you were explaining the wheel and showing it, so I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm
Oh,
sure
that's okay. If you still would like to go, I can step you through. We're just going to pull up the wheel again.
Cool.
Excellent. And you just tell us when to spin it.
Okay, spin it. And then do I say when to stop or just stop?
Oh, it stops. You have number 5. Okay.
So what is number 5? Angela, I think you're muted.
Oh, great. Typical Zoom error. Sorry. Number 5. So, Liliya, how do you approach the unknown composer? As a composer, as a creator, how do you approach the unknown?
Take it. Study. I mean, it's so super banal, I guess, but like I can just imagine that's how I'd approach it. I just would kind of get to its all possible known sites and then enjoy it because what else can you do, right? So study as much as you can. That unknown, what can be unknown? I guess the genre you're writing for the composers, right? Or the subject that you're writing. Like actually in one of my relatively recent works for Pierrot Sextet. Pierrot Sextet is, for some of the audience who don't know, it's a mixed ensemble, and this is like flute, clarinet, piano, violin, cello, and percussion. So I was particularly commissioned by Ensemble Victory Players, and they had the project called El Puerto Rico. And I'm not Hispanic, and I don't know much about Puerto Rico, but it was just something that I got invited for, and I knew the group was great, and I was really fascinated by the place. So I read a lot about it, and I highlighted certain things about it that I was very inspired by, and studied the music as much as I could, through sort of remote exploration. And then I wrote a piece that I called The Island of Enchantment. So for me, it was like a remote island, and I connected it also to the world we were living in during the pandemic. We kind of wanted to go somewhere. So that was also connected towards my familiar to me feelings of nostalgia, because as an immigrant myself, I know this sort of feelings that Bosba is talking about when you sort of want to go back, but at the same time understand it's very difficult. But you have this sort of longing, and so I wrote this piece about the imaginary place. Yes, and I explored a lot of different sounds there that I have never tried before. one part of it was thanks to the ensemble, because even before 2020 and 2019, they invited us to just try different sounds with them. And obviously, I just tried a bunch of different combinations of things and different ways of producing the sound. Yeah, so I guess that's an approach. Then, I mean, I think one thing that why do we study for so long, or like some of us, I guess, and I just got my doctorate this May, which was remote for not remote, but like because it's a doctoral program. I was there for I wasn't there for the last 4 years. But I think one thing that we learn when we study is how to study, right? So, and I think that's something that I could say I feel comfortable in doing. I feel comfortable in studying.
I think that's. I think those are great tips that you have shared with us. Like, do your research, right? Like, do your research, study.
But it's fun, it's just fun. It's like, as Julie mentioned, we have a luxury of doing that, and it's just fun to have time for study.
No,
And
that's
opportunities, right?
yes, that's so important. To do the research and then just give yourself time to explore. Audience members, I hope you're listening. Just give yourself time to explore and enjoy. Composers, would you say also enjoy?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Liliya. Oh, I almost muted myself again. Bosba, your turn to spin the wheel. So if we can share the screen again. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Go ahead.
Spin. Dun, 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 dun. Woohoo! Oh, great. I'm sure this is going to be a great one too. Okay, number 7. Okay, Bosba. As a composer, creator, what are things unique to you that no one can take away?
I guess being Cambodian, there's just not a lot of us in the field. So actually, like there's just a very small network of Cambodians that are in academia for starters, and then like in arts and humanities, it's even smaller. I mean, literally like Sokantari Svai, like and Brian Sangdala, who's probably on the Zoom right now. Like these are like only like 2 other people that I know that are of more or less of my generation. And then we have Chinerium, who is also on the Zoom. So hi Chineri, who's like much older, but he's like he was like sort of like a groundbreaker for composers because he was the first composer to American and Cambodian composer to have won the Gravemaker Award. I'm sure that you probably know him. He's very well known in the academic community. But I can count basically about 4 people in the arts community like that are alive. And that's within like the Asian American network. So and obviously like we all come with a shared history, which is that most of us have been displaced because of the Khmer Rouge genocide. So whether we want it or not, I think it's very hard to ignore whatever is happening like in your personal life. Even though you want to write about something else, you can study Ravel and Debussy as long as you want, and it's great. They're my favorite composers, but I think I would be lying to myself if there were aspects of my life that didn't bother me. So I find that even when I try to not write music that doesn't have to do with my identity, somehow I still come back to it. And I'm sure that even as a musicologist, Brian is doing performance studies, and he's training as a musicologist at Cornell. He is also drawn to his experience as a Khmer person, but also as a queer Khmer person. You have Sokantari Svai, who has written, the opera with Liliya, which is also about, her story and her family's story, and, crossing the border from, like the camps in Cambodia to Khao Dan in Thailand. So I would say, all of us have definitely, being Cambodian is quite special, especially when you're in a very restricted academic field. And it's sort of like a constant battle, I think, for all of us to either really feel really centered or feel that we have people who center our identity.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Bosba. Of the 4 that you mentioned, I hope you were counting yourself as well?
Yep. So that's
okay, great.
myself, Brian, secondary slide. And I think we have somebody else at Stanford. Yeah, so that's maybe like 5 people in total.
And Brian, I noticed in the comments, not in the comments, the chat, it was so wonderful. You said small but mighty group. So mighty group. Thank you. And then on Sims, if you want to include things in the chat for everyone to see, just make sure to select the everyone option from the chat. But thank you, Bosba, for sharing. I just feel so honored that you're here and with us, and like I said, sharing your story. So thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, we did this, spin the wheel. Next, we have another activity before our fabulous Q&A. And this activity, again, it's centered on the theme of courage. And it's actually going to be fill in the blank. And the scenario is treasure hunt. Okay, so we're all going to go on a treasure hunt right now, and I'm going to say a sentence, but in those sentences, those are blanks. And so in this case, composers, you're all going to answer the same question. Does that make sense? So you're all going to fill in the same blank. So audience members, feel free to play along and see if, one of your answers matches the composer's. Again, please select the everyone option in the chat. So, excuse me, let me pull that up. Okay, I'm going to read the following prompts. Okay, it's time for a treasure hunt. You are looking for blank. So perhaps Liliya will go with you first, and then Julie, and then Bosba.
Let's say I'm looking for my memory.
That's great.
I lost it before, like pretend.
We're looking for memory. I need that too, so maybe I'll travel with you. Julie?
I guess whenever I'm hunting for something, I take it very literally. I like to hunt for insects. So maybe I'm looking for a rare moth with a wingspan the size of a bird's.
Whoa, like Mothra? Kind of.
Mothra?
Okay.
No, but they exist. They exist in the
Oh.
Caribbean. Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got this extraordinary rare moth.
Yes.
I kind of want to go on that adventure too. And Bosba?
Oh man, this is gonna sound so annoying, but I'm actually looking for a DMA program. Because out of all the programs I've looked so far, none of them I feel like are sort of like fit to me, or that people are showing interest in me or my work. So it's actually been quite hard, like trying to find the right program or the right place to continue my studies in. So yeah, if anybody has tips, please contact me.
So DMA program. Actually, Bosba, do you mind for our audience members who are not certain what exactly that is yet? Do you mind explaining or what a DMA program is?
Well, it's basically a PhD, which is like the highest academic degree you can get in general academic institutions. But the DMA is a Doctor of Musical Arts. Essentially, it's like imagine a PhD but with less writing, but you do a bit more sort of like artistic output. Which in the case of composers, usually the DMA would be, say, half of it would be, composition portfolio, but you still have a written portion, which is like about the other half.
Okay, so composer's doctorate, yeah. Okay, so we're looking for a memory, a rare moth, and our DMA program. Oh, love this. It's so such a variety. Okay, next question. You get to bring one person to guide you on your journey. So you bring blank because of blank. And this time we'll go, why don't we do Julie, Bosba, and then Liliya. Julie, who are you going to bring to find that rare
Well,
moment?
the person I would bring is Martha, the entomologist, because she's kind and she's knowledgeable and so funny, and I just know that in a jungle I could really depend on her.
And this is Martha. I'm trying to find
Marta, she was my terrestrial arthropods teacher. And
Oh, okay.
so, yeah, she's amazing.
Wow,
She taught me
you took
everything I know.
a class called terrestrial arthropods?
Yes, so arthropods are a group of sort of in like the animal kingdom. And actually horseshoes are also arthropods, which is why, you have to specify terrestrial, and usually insects don't include spiders. So that's why you have to say arthropods instead of insects. Anyway, this is getting too far.
This is great. This is wonderful. I was like, maybe you composed something inspired by this class or your experience with entomology. That'd be so cool. Next, Bospa, who would you bring and why?
I think I would probably bring my younger self, because then I wouldn't have to like be so mean to myself.
Bospa, do you mind saying the name again? I think.
I said I would probably bring my younger self. So every time like I want to say something really mean to myself, like I can't do it, right?
Wow, is that kind of meta? That's so great. Oh, that's a very good idea. Thank you, Bospa. Oh, I didn't think of that. Great. How about you, Liliya?
I'm going to be super banal. I'll just take my mother with me since she knows most of my life and it's the person I can trust the most in deconstructing my memory. Or not deconstructing, reconstructing, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's so useful. Of course you would bring, of course you would bring a family member. No, thank you for that. Oh, that was fun. Okay, so we're gonna keep on going. So question number 3, and then we'll start with we'll go Bospa, Liliya, Julie. You're adventuring happily on your treasure hunt when suddenly you realize you're lost. You find your way again by blank.
Opening Google Maps. I don't know, like probably doing like a very basic sundial and like trying to find where the north is and like calculate like, other parts. I guess like also like, if like you're into like survival stuff, you probably like look around for like clues, if there are like insects or like, animals going one way or the other.
We need Julie's expertise and Liliya's
Yeah, I was gonna say,
memory.
probably should have said like, yeah, if I'm going on a journey, I would probably bring Julie.
Oh, I like that. Like you're looking for clues, and I love how you said that you're just going to create a sundial by yourself. I think that's pretty clever. Pretty clever. Liliya? I said Liliya, right? Liliya.
Well, I'm going to hear if I can hear my son, because where he is, that means that's where my home is.
You said your son?
Yeah,
Oh,
because he'll be calling for me.
that's incredibly touching. Thank you, Liliya. And Julie.
Well, if I'm in the jungle, probably a satellite phone would be most useful if I'm lost. But to bring it back to our topic, I do think that whenever I'm lost, I turn to technology. Technology usually saves me in some way, whether it's, Max MSP or, processing or super collider. One of these tech things usually saves the day for me.
Julie, you need to explain that all to me, and maybe after all those cool things, gadgets not gadgets, tech that you just said. But no, it's very true. That could be like a whole other panel of how, as creators, how technology has made an impression or impacted the way we go about creating our work. Thanks, Julie. Okay, next up. Uh-oh, you're confronted by a troll that tries to make you feel small. You defeat this troll by blank. And I think we're back to Liliya, Julie, and Bosba, correct?
I like being small. I'm I'm like almost 5 feet tall. So I don't mind, and I would just say it's okay, and I would just ignore him, I guess, and would continue going.
Because you're so small that you can just escape. You just run away from the troll.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
But
great.
small is good. Like I I have no negativity towards that.
I agree. I'm only a little over 5 feet, so yay, fun size. And then Julie, how do you defeat this troll?
I agree with Lilia. I feel like if I feel small, it would be cool if I could be even smaller, kind of like Arrietty in The Borrowers by Mary Norton. And I think Arrietty is a Miyazaki film, and there's based on this short story, and it's just these little people who live in the houses of big people, and they borrow things like little pin needle for a sword, or like a spool of thread for a table. And it just seems like it'd be really cool to see our world with a different perspective.
Ooh, now I really want to be really tiny too and start. Maybe that would be the treasure hunt. Like, how do we find all the things that we usually need? Like sugar cubes, like a cube of sugar
Yes.
for tea, these tiny thimbles. That's great. Thanks so much, Julie. And Bospa.
I would defeat this troll by fighting it. I think everybody who knows me personally knows that I'm very confrontational and very argumentative. Like like even if it's not, like physically fighting this troll, it would probably be like, I don't know, like getting into an argument and then trying to like argument my way through that particular argument. I talk a lot, so I feel like I'm quite good at argumenting my way through things and to basically make the other person feel that I'm annoying, just get away from me.
Oh, that's a good power. Like defeat the troll with words, persistent words. Love it, love it. Thanks, Bospa. And the last question is, yay! You've reached your treasure. You found your memory. You found this rare moth and your DMA program. Woohoo! And this is a question for all of us, not a fill in the blank. What do you treasure most about yourself as a composer? And we'll go Julie, Bospa, Liliya. What do you treasure most about yourself as a composer?
I think I treasure most just my curiosity, I guess. It is maybe the opposite side of that is like sort of attention deficit. But I do love so many things, and I think it really keeps me going. It's sort of the magic that of like discovering something and then creating something with it, and it's that kind of flow is what I look forward to every day. It doesn't always happen, but yeah, it feels amazing.
I really treasure that because I don't think we talk about enough, like following our curiosity versus the day-to-day needs of life, like having to do this and having to do that. But I think you described so perfectly the magic and the joy of just listening to your curiosity and following where it goes. Oh, that's beautiful. Audience, this is your encouragement to follow your curiosity. Please do. Thank you, Julie. Bosba?
I would probably say that what I treasure the most about myself as a composer is that I can decide when to write and when not to write, and that I've come to a point where I don't feel as guilty about it, because I think when you're training, in a very specialized field, it feels that you're in a rat race, which means, if you're not publishing a paper or writing a piece or getting a commission or getting a major grant or getting a particular DMA program, you feel that your worth as a person decreases. And, there's a lot of debate, I think, in general about the nature of academia, whether, it's becoming a field that's too restricted, which means that even if you train as a musician, you can't become anything else, or if you're not publishing a paper as a scientist, you basically can't find a job, because there's always money involved with finding an academic position, and whether you're willing to accept a particular entry level position as an academic, which is poorly paid, and do you really want to toil for 25 years before you get professorship. And I think what I've come to really enjoy about myself is that I've come to realize my worth not just as a composer, but that being a composer is only one aspect of who I am, and that my worth is just not through just my output, not just through, writing music. Even if I write a really bad piece, yeah, you know what, that's fine. We all have some pieces that we're not as proud as others. And I think, when, especially in music, I feel that there are very, I think it's sort of the unspoken thing that if you don't go through a particular program or a particular summer program, that your worth decreases because of it. And I've come to sort of just not give a crap about it. And just just enjoy my life, like Judy said, when you have curiosity, sometimes you just have to remember that you don't always have to monetize that curiosity. Sometimes it's okay to just keep it for yourself. And I mean, I'm working in the publishing industry now, so I work with composers all day long. I work with them, I protect their rights to their music. We, like the publishing industry, our job basically is to sell and to find the opportunities to get that music performed. So, even though, I'm still working with composition every day, sometimes, I ask myself, oh man, I'm not actively composing. I'm not being the artsy fartsy person in the studio in Paris, but I've come to realize that actually, no, composition has been a part of my journey, and I wouldn't be in this position where I'm, guiding composers in another aspect of the industry. But my worth hasn't decreased because I haven't had the output that, what academia wants of me. And I think it's also important for me to realize that I'm only willing to give some output if I'm comfortable with, well, essentially as composers, we sort of have to deconstruct ourselves every time we write a piece, which then reconstructs us. So I feel I have to, now I have the luxury to pick and choose when I want to write music, and not have sort of my, think about a tenureship or a paper that's not going out, or if I'm producing good composers here and there. So yeah, I would say that's something that I've come to realize in the past 8 months, and that's an aspect of myself as a composer that I have come to really, protect.
I really appreciate what you just said. It was real talk, right? Because I think in our society we're so pressured to so results oriented, right? You gotta get that composition out, that art piece. I can identify with that, with putting pressure on myself to you have to come to the studio every single day. You have to paint every single day, and it's just not natural for me. And so when I appreciate you saying
Well, it's because life
the
in
permission
general,
to
life in general is a sort of scenic journey, right? I mean, some people I think want to get to certain points faster than others, so it will be a race to get up to a certain point. But I think in general, it's also nice to So that sort of just reground yourself and just remember that, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy this journey. I'll get to that place when I get to that place, even if it takes me 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Jolie said earlier that, she didn't really get to composition before she was 28-ish. So, I mean, yeah, some people start composing when they're 12 or like when they're 5, but, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get to a particular point. Yeah, you might you might get to that point and then you're just like, you know what, I'm not really enjoying this place. And you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to continue and then embrace the unknown. Coming back to one of the points we mentioned earlier.
Yes, embrace the unknown. Live. As creators, we have to live. Thank you, Bosba. Liliya.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with both Julie and Bosba. I from one side, I definitely like to explore and just to be curious of things and try them. But from the other side, I really appreciate that I don't feel like I have to follow anyone's path. Like particularly in writing, like I can't say I've never felt like that, but for sure right now in recent years, I don't feel like I ever have to follow anyone's example in terms of writing, in terms of any piece, or in terms of, structure, genre, aesthetics, which I think sometimes when some artists focus in a very particular path, it actually, you can get very skilled in that, obviously sooner because you're very focused. But that's not something I would enjoy doing. And I feel, I also appreciate that I sort of feel that my everyday life influences my work the most. Even if it's simple things like routine of being a mother, or if it's, I don't know, something more deep, like, I don't know, immigrant feelings. I feel like it's my everyday life that seem to distract me. If in the past I would think it distracts me from composing, from being focused, but it actually is part of my composing because it's part of me. Yeah, and I think I just appreciate this understanding.
I certainly appreciate it. It just like gives a totally different perspective on, like, you think about certain milestones you have to lead or certain challenges you come across, and to know that if you live through this challenge or this time period or this experience, it's creative fuel, right? It's like right at your fingertips.
I mean, it's sorry, I would like to add to this. It's something that I particularly got to notice, and it's very obvious. I, as a pianist, when I lived in New York area, when I lived in New Haven, I used to try to go frequently to the recitals and to the concerts of, very respected or well-known pianists. And I would often find myself not as impressed as I would have been by like some much less, like some student recitals or something, or even like student put recitals, because, and it was clear why, because when you have to do something on the daily, when you have to express, not even express, but exploit your art very, like really a lot, very frequently. So to the point that it becomes your life exploiting your art consistently. You have nothing to feed it with. Yes, technically you can still do the same thing, but it's hard to be inspired every time you have to play, I don't know, Prokofiev 3, and like if you're playing it 4 times in 2 weeks, right? So of course, that's why, like, if you go to someone who is well known, it doesn't mean that you would get this kind of spark that you could get from, some other time that they performed that you haven't been at. So, and that's a thing that I feel like I'm not wasting my time when I'm not composing. I'm feeding myself and feeding it back.
Oh, I hope everyone listens to that. Like, actually, all three of you are very in sync with these words of wisdom. No, thank you. I learned from you even before this panel. Like I said before, it's so important to live as creators and to just be with these lived experiences. I don't think we get these words of advice very often. I think oftentimes the words of advice are, gotta hit this and this check mark and this check mark and this check mark. And I think what you're saying is what we needed. It's not even just a breath of fresh air. I could feel like my heart just like running around like a child and say like I'm free. I can do all these things and follow my curiosity and like create on my own time and stop pressuring yourselves ourselves to complete a certain output. So thank you, composers. Thank you, composers, for playing the fill in the blank treasure hunt style. Okay, so we've reached the Q&A portion of the panel. Just a time check, it's 12:06. The panel is meant to end at 12:15. I will try to do my best to end on time, but it is very possible that based on the juicy questions and the responses that we may go over 5 minutes. This is just a heads up for everyone who's here. Audience members, this is your time to ask your burning questions to the composers. So please keep in mind that when phrasing your question, that I will be asking all the composers to respond to the same question. Does that make sense? So there's a way you could tweak your question that you have if it's for one particular composer and open it up to all three. That would be much appreciated. You can ask your question by pressing the Q&A button. So that if you look down at the Zoom panel, there's a Q&A next to the live transcript. If you click that, you can type in your question, and if you would like to be anonymous, you can check off the anonymous box that's right below it. So, and if the Q&A button is a little bit tricky, you can always just put your question in the chat. So we'll give like a minute or two. Yeah, just like a minute or two for the questions to roll in. I should probably play like da na 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 da to like pass the time. So
actually, somebody had a question earlier. If we rephrase that particular question, so Brennan asked me in particular, that concerning one of the teachers I had at NEC and how my path has changed since meeting that person. I think, Brennan, if you're okay, I'm going to rephrase the question. I think maybe the question is, who is one teacher that has been influential in your journey that has like took you down the path that is completely different from yours? So I know I've just rephrased it. I'll just do it quickly just because I already know the answer. I had two particular big teachers. One of them is Liliya Ugay, which I met actually when I was 12. So sorry, like between 12 like on email and then 14 in person for the first time. And Liliya is the reason why I moved to the United States, because he told my parents that, yeah, your kid needs to get some better education than in Cambodia, which ended up, I ended up going to an arts boarding school right outside of Boston called the Walnut Hill School for the Arts, which was paired with the New England Conservatory Preparatory School, and then I went down to New England Conservatory for my undergraduate degree. And the second biggest teacher I met there was Ken Chaphorst, who is actually the head of the jazz department, because I decided to split my seal with Michael Gandolfi, who is another composition teacher there. And essentially Ken was the person, because he wasn't in the classical department, he had a totally different outlook on composition. And I think out of all the composition teachers, he's the one that really created a safe space for me to really, talk about anything from personal problems happening when I was in school and to my output as a composer, because he understood that, if something was bothering me, if I was being, if I was getting like passive or very aggressive comments towards my identity as a Cambodian person or as a student or as a woman, that, that was going to affect the kind of output I was going to do. And, it was also under him and Michael where I did that particular piece earlier on that I mentioned, that's called Father Mine. And I felt that, that was a very difficult piece for me to tackle because of the subject matter. But both, like especially Ken, but also with Michael, Ken was really, I would talk to him about like things that had nothing to do with music, like how the genocide was still very present, almost like a sort of like ghost, or like, like the sort of Damocles that's just like hanging over your head. That's the feeling that we have in our family. And those were things that, especially as a woman with men, maybe, like, I was talking about, like with a male teacher, I was talking about all of these gender issues also, like within my community, when it came to how we talk about, trauma, and especially like memory. Chineri has also always been sort of like my, a grandfather or a father figure for me in composition. So those are two teachers that have really like completely changed my journey. And the third person, actually, which I think he deserves really a big shout out, is Whitman Brown, who is my high school composition teacher. He's the one who told me about 3 weeks before the deadlines for college applications, and he told me, Boza, you really need to send in applications for composition. And I told him, like, okay, whatever, like, I'll just send them in. I'm never gonna be a composer. Long story short, I became a composer. So those are three really big figures in my life that changed the course of my life and artists.
Thank you so much, Bosba. Just a little update. Thank you, Burnett, for asking that question. I know it was for Bosba, and I'm so grateful that we were able to fit it in and respond to it. Just a heads up, we do need to end on time today, and just out of fairness for the we have another question here by another attendee, and just out of fairness, so we can answer one more question. If we can be open to composers, if you're open to moving towards the next question, if that's okay, just so we there's one other person who's asking before we need to end at 12:15. Does that sound good? Okay. And the question is, and actually it could be related to the question Bernard asked. How do you persevere through challenges you face as women of color composers? What messages do you hope to send to listeners? And if I know maybe if all of you can take like a minute or so to answer this question, we'll go in the same order of the banner image of Liliya, Julie, and Bosba. Does it sound good? And then we'll conclude the panel.
Well, I wrote that piece, Strong Tone, you can listen to it. That's how I guess. But it's what you do. You just talk about it. You just write it about you compose, create works that are inspired by these challenges. That's all. I'm going to be brief because I know I have to end on time too. But I think that's all I can say.
And Lily, you said you said composing about the challenges, right?
Well, yeah. Well, being inspired by these challenges, like using them as a source of your inspiration, like directly, whether it means speaking about like using. I know this is different. Like if I'm a mother, it doesn't mean like I'm necessarily Asian mother, but I'm a mother. I'm using, for example, one piece like the toys that I play with my child with for like in my routine as a mother because I maybe don't have enough time to sit and improvise on some other instrument, and this becomes my instrument for a time. Or it is like in the piece that I sent in the chat, some more of the eternal in some way, or like long living very old issues, such as like requesting virginity from women in such a humiliating way for certain customs, or like ignoring the issue of the postpartum depression in mothers. Or in certain part of the world it's always different, but we all are women, we're all humans, and being Asian women makes it a little bit more difficult because now you're even more difficult, but at the same time more interesting, right? So it's, for artists, I think it's definitely that challenge is a benefit.
Thank you, Lilian. Do we have time for Julie and Bosba? I think we'll give it a shot. Julie?
I think the question posed to Bosba and also the question now by Evelyn are very related for me. So persevering, I mean, the reason I'm here is because of teachers, and especially my advisor, Jarek Kapuczynski at Stanford. He's just been such an amazing supporter. And I think through everything, sort of whatever I wanted to try, whatever doubts I had, he was there to just sort of listen and give really honest advice. And I think sort of I just want to echo what Liliya was saying, and also Bosba, sort of like Bosba for representation, of diverse identities in composition, and also for Liliya, just doing what we do. I think just the fact that we are sort of doing what we do, and maybe the younger generation will see possibly themselves composing, and I think that is how change happens. So yeah.
Thank you, Julie. It's really powerful. Thank you so much. And Bosa, want to be our grand finale answer before we wrap it up?
How do I persevere? I don't know. I guess like I persevere through spite. I really like I'm not the kind of person who's like all nice after somebody like challenges me or like disrespects me. I will really like do things out of spite after that, just to like annoy people and just show them that, you know what, actually I can, yeah, I will annoy you. I will do these things so it enrages you. But I think, I mean, for me, I mean, it's very small, like support comes in very small acts. For example, people actually spelling my name correctly, even though there's only like 5 letters. Somehow people always misspell it, so I get really annoyed about it. And then I'll just annoy people back and just tell them, okay, just call me Bob, because then I obviously don't look at all like a Bob person, but they usually get the message out of it. But I think more generally, as a composer, is that I think I persevere just by remembering that just because I don't always have to persevere, like it's okay to give up sometimes and just have my peaceful time, and like my, like just like have like, a time in my life where I can sort of like, cultivate a sense of peace and like not compose if it brings me pain. So, perseverance like is not always just like, yeah, I got to toil and like, be depressed because I'm writing pieces that are not representing who I am. Like it's okay to like take a step back and just reevaluate, your life and like your sense of peace, if in a piece, before then like continuing. And I think that's part of how you persevere, really. Like it doesn't always have to be like, pain all the time.
Thank you so much, Bosba. Truth to that. Real talk today. Real talk from all the composers. We are so grateful to Liliya, Julie, Bosba for sharing their experiences and their words of wisdom at this grand finale performance. I mean, not performance, panel. Thank you to all 3 of you. This concludes our, like I said, grand finale Realms of Courage Composers panel. Huge round of applause for all the composers for inspiring us with their stories and words of wisdom. Please save the links in the chat below that go directly to their websites. Once again, huge shout out to APIC and Samara for ensuring the smooth flow of today's panel, as well as to Nicole and Kristen for their vital work in interpreting our incredible conversation. Thank you to the SFAC and APIC for supporting Realms of Courage. I'll also like to thank the following organizations for making the festival possible: San Francisco Grants for the Arts, California Arts Council, a state agency, Zellerbach Family Foundation, and Start Small. Audience members, we're so grateful for you for taking the time to participate in this composers panel and for your questions. Thank you for supporting Pacific Islander and Asian American arts. For those of you in the Bay Area, let's work together to keep the SF Bay Area a place for Asian Pacific Islander art to thrive. Please email your district supervisors and tell them why this arts community is important to you and why you want them to continue supporting API art. For everyone, thank you again for attending this event. To experience all 5 composers virtually, head over to YouTube. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. This was so phenomenal. Okay, so if you need a